I'm Tom Johnson, Thomas Johnson Antique Furniture Restoration in Gorham, Maine. I'm always amazed at how many pieces come into the shop needing new feet. Sometimes maybe a foot got chewed off. Sometimes people may just want to raise the height of a bed. Sometimes feet are lost during a move. Here are 3 ways that I've solved these problems. I'm Tom Johnson of Thomas Johnson Antique Furniture Restoration in Gorham, Maine. This is a pedestal from a dining room table. It's not an antique. It's very nicely carved though, great carvings. And what has happened is that a dog has chewed off the center claw on the ball and claw foot. So I'm going to plane this down flat. I may have to do 2 pieces of wood at 2 different angles. Glue new wood on, and then carve down a new toe, of course to match the original. First I'm going to clamp the pedestal down to the bench. I'm going to clamp right here, right past the foot. I want to put some wood under it to give a little support. I want to plane off the shredded wood on the toe. I don't want to hit the ball. I think I'm probably going to end up planing in 2 places and putting on 2 pieces of wood. I'm going to start bringing the plane, I'm going to start dropping the back of the plane a little bit. I'm getting a pretty good flat surface here. I'm going to drop it and see if I can bring it right to that ball. I got a good flat surface here, but my initial planing I dropped off here a little bit. I'm thinking I'm going to glue a small piece of wood there. And I've also got a problem on this side of the toe where I can't plane right now. I'm thinking of chiseling that off and gluing a small piece of wood there. And then tomorrow, then planing this again to get the whole surface flat and gluing a larger piece on top. Okay, let me get some mahogany. I'm not sure exactly what kind of wood this is, but it's got to be in the mahogany family, and I'll use mahogany because of the color that I'm ultimately going for anyway. Now, before I attempt to plane this again, I'm going to try to chisel away as much of the excess wood that I can. Alright, so now I'm ready to start carving, although the first step is to cut away, carefully cut away all the excess wood that I can with a saw. The thing to be most careful here is, at this stage, is not to cut away too much wood. I had oiled up that contour gauge, and that's just traces of the oil, but it's actually giving me a good visual. So now at this point I've sawn away as much as I can, and so I'm just going to start whittling away, first with regular chisels, and then I'll get out the carving tools and try to carefully shape this down. Okay, I've sanded it, my carving up to 150, and now I'm going to apply some stain. I'm going to start off with some oil stain. My new wood looks pretty good. The original wood, which is lighter, I'm going to apply a little dye stain to that selectively. Now I'm going to give it a couple coats of shellac. Now my stain on my new area and stuff looked pretty good when it was wet. As it dries, it looks a little duller. I'm going to sand it. I have 2 coats of shellac on here. I'm going to sand it with 500 grit paper. And then actually I'm going to tone it a little bit with some golden oak toner because we've got a lot of yellow going on here. And then I'm just going to build up coats of gloss lacquer. Okay, so I've sprayed a coat of satin lacquer on all my touch-up work, and now I'm just going to go over the whole pedestal with my beeswax polish. Alright, there you go, this pedestal. It was chewed up by dogs in quite a few places, but the worst place was here on this big toe. If you remember, I scarfed on a piece of wood, actually a few different pieces of wood, carved it down. So there it is. I think it looks pretty good. I'm Tom Johnson of Thomas Johnson Antique Furniture Restoration in Gorham, Maine. This is a very nice headboard and footboard. It's French. I'm not sure which style. I know it's French because it's stamped with the name of the manufacturer and their address in Paris. I'm thinking possibly it's a early 20th century reproduction. And what's got to happen here is the owners want the bed raised up. The original height of the rails was very low. So we're going to raise it up 4.5 inches, and then I'm going to make new bed rails long enough for a queen size bed. And I think the first thing I'm going to do is remove one of the legs just to see exactly what I've got there. Okay, the foot came off fine. So I have turned 4 identical legs here. As you can see, I've already put flutes in 2 of them. What I did was I made this jig, which is a box made out of plywood that I can fit over the leg that I've turned here. I've remounted it on the lathe. Now I will adjust my jig exactly where I want it, and I'll use a small air-powered router then to make the actual flute. Okay, I've got the box clamped into position now. I lock the lathe into position using the index, and then I'll make my first cut here a light cut. Okay, so now I'm going to trim off this waste piece. I'll leave the bottom on for now, so give me a way to stand them up. I'm going to sand the flutes and stain these and get them ready for a finish. There's a lot of different colors in the footboard and headboard, but I'm going to concentrate mostly on the color that's on this upper column, because my pieces match that. I fooled around with a piece of wood that I have from same stock that I turned the legs with, mixed together some walnut stain and some golden oak stain. It looks a lot lighter there. The leg that I stained, though, because it's a turning, came out darker. I'm still glad that the leg is lighter. I'm going to use this stain and then I'll seal it with shellac, and then I have a couple of other techniques with other stains I'll use to darken it. Now I'll brush on the first of 2 coats of shellac. So I've let the shellac dry overnight. Now I'm going to sand them with 320, and then I'm going to stain them again, either with an oil stain or a glaze, to see if I can bring it into the footboard. So now I've got them all sanded, and I'm going to apply the glaze coat. Glaze is a heavy medium. I don't know exactly what it's made out of, with colors added. In this particular case, I buy the glaze already mixed up with Van Dyke Brown in it. You can control the glaze. That's why you put it over a sealed surface. Just as a demonstration, I'll put some on my sample piece. You apply the glaze. You can wipe off as much or as little as you want. So I'll very carefully just pat it a little bit. I'll leave a little bit more on this side. Then I take a dry brush. I'm leaving a little bit more on this side so it'll be darker. So I'll apply the glaze liberally because I want it to get down into all the crevices and corners, and I'm just patting it off. Now I want to leave some down in these corners and crevices and whatnot, but not too much. And the part that's left over in the crevices and corners and stuff is a little darker, and that gives it more depth. My foot here is a little light. Definitely don't want the foot to be lighter. Feet are always darker. Yeah, I like the way it looks. It looks good with the other upper part of the column. Now that's very much kind of laying on the surface. It needs to dry really well. If you're going to brush on a finish, maybe dry overnight. I'm going to spray these with the aerosol lacquer, and so I need to let it dry for just an hour. I made a little jig here just a square piece of wood. I drilled a 1/2 inch hole on the drill press, attached just to the back. I can clamp it here to line up exactly where I need to drill. This is a dowel sizer. It'll help me size the dowel I turned on the leg. By changing the angle and clamp, I'm just trying to get that to go on straight. The next step is to make new rails for the bed. This bed didn't come with any rails. It doesn't matter anyway, although it would have been nice to know what they look like. I think it's pretty straightforward. We need to make new rails in any case because we're making this bed into a queen size bed. So I'll cut these boards and mill them up long enough for a queen. So I've cut my rails to length, and I need to drill into the ends. I'm going to put 2 dowels and then a hole for a bed bolt. I cut an extra piece when I was cross-cutting them of the rail, about 2 inches wide, and on the drill press I drilled the holes exactly where I wanted them and attached this so I can attach it to the rails. The center hole is for the bolt. This is the bed bolt that's going to go through the headboard and footboard, and I'm going to embed the nut into the rail. So the first step is to drill that center hole deep enough to go to the nut. Alright, I'm going to try the nut again. Oh, it looks good. That's got it. Now I've got to make 2 different moldings. On the bed, right here where the rail attaches, there's 2 different moldings that run along the bottom and the top of the rail, so I've got to reproduce those. Now I've drilled all the rails and installed the bed bolts. I did one section of the bed where the rails connect, and now I've got to do the other 3 parts of these legs where the rails connect. The center hole is for the bolt, so I've got to drill that now all the way through. What I'm going to do is I'm going to clamp a piece of scrap wood underneath so that when the bit breaks through the other side, it's clean. Now I've got my 1/2 inch hole, which can accommodate the bolt itself, but I'm going to need to drill from this side a 7/8 hole to accommodate the head of the bolt. So the first thing I'm going to do is plug this hole with a 1/2 inch dowel so I can drill. So here's my plugged hole, and now I've got to drill a 7/8 hole to accommodate the head of the bolt. So I'm going to go down 1 inch right here. I'm going to clamp a block of wood to the side. The bit gets so close to the edge here that I want to ensure that I don't get any breakout or anything. Now the bolt fits right in there, and I got room for a cover. Now comes the moment of truth when I put the bed together with the new rails for the first time. I'm going to put it together, and then I'm going to attach the moldings to the outside of the rail, because I've got to line them up exactly with the existing moldings on the bed. Now, while the bed is assembled, and the nuts I know are in place and positioned where they need to be, I cut some little pieces of wood and I'm going to glue that in there. I'll flush it off and sand it later to capture the nut in place. Sanded up my moldings here, and now I want to locate them while the rails are still attached to the bed. I think what I'll do is I'll clamp the moldings in place, and then I'll just draw a line, and then I can take the bed apart and glue and nail the moldings. So now I'm going to trim off the ends so that they're nice and flush. And then I've already sanded everything, but I'm going to go over everything again with 150. I'm staining the rails now with some oil stain, some brown, some golden oak, and thinner. So here's the bed set up in a customer's home. If you remember, when they bought it, it was just a headboard and a footboard. It was much lower to the ground, so I made new legs that raised the height 4.5 inches, and it had no bed rails. Also, it was made for a 54-inch bed, so I made new rails, and I was able to move them far enough to the outside edge of the bed that it can now accommodate a 60-inch mattress. And the bed is put together with bed bolts. There it is. I think it looks pretty good. I'm Tom Johnson, Thomas Johnson Antique Furniture Restoration in Gorham, Maine. This is a really nice chest of drawers. It's Federal from about 1780 to 1800, that time period there. During a move, the feet over here were broken off and lost. We have no feet. So using those as a model and template, I need to reproduce the missing feet. All right, the first thing I'm going to do is remove this piece of molding. I have some broken blocks here, and clean this up and see exactly what I've got here.
can see that the case is dovetailed together. I don't think I can pull these nails out. I think I'll clamp this into position and see if I can tap them back out. See if I got a block here that will fit this molding. Actually, this block looks pretty good. I just got to cut a little bit more away there, and I think it'll work fine. Although I'm anxious to start making the actual feet, I think I'm going to clean up these surfaces now, and then I'm going to mill up the pine that I need to replace these two pieces, and then I'll make the mahogany feet. Okay, the next step is to start making the actual feet. So I want to measure this width, rip my board to that width, and then thickness it down to the proper thickness. It's really hard to see exactly where the boards are joined together here. I think I'll put a piece of tape across there just to help me. Yeah, I think I'll call it 4 13/16. It's maybe just a skosh under that, but that's okay. I can always cut it back a little bit. Alright, now I want to see what my thickness is. I'm going to check it in a few different places. Generally speaking, you know, it's about 13/16. The feet sit right on top of this molding, and they're the same width of this molding, which varies greatly. So the feet on this side need to be that thickness. The one in the front needs to be this thickness. The one in the front is 3/4. My thickness here in the back is 3/4. Maybe I'll make it a little heavier than 3/4 and then I'll adjust it later when I go to attach it. Before I start to cut the feet out of this board, I need to repair the molding that goes right up against the feet. I've got the piece of mahogany that I cut from this board, and I'll use it to scarf a piece on here. This is the broken part, and I need to plane this flat so I can glue a new piece of wood on it. I think what I'm going to do is clamp this straight edge down along the line that I want to plane to use as a guide. Now as I get close here, I'm just going to let the plane blade run right along that straight edge. May not be great for the blade, but I'll have to sharpen it. Just about there. I think I need to put a stronger clamp at this end. I'm going to use the hand screw clamp with sandpaper on the jaws. I'm even going to slip a piece of tri-folded sandpaper under here to keep that straight, to help keep that straight edge from slipping. Okay, so now I want to lay this against this piece of wood I have and figure out what part of this board I want to cut to glue on here. So I'm looking at this piece of wood that I thought I was going to use, and I really don't like it. It's got kind of crazy grain pattern, yet my piece of molding here, it's hard to tell, but it's got a fairly straight grain. So anyway, I found another piece of mahogany I have that's really nice, and I think matches this a lot better. So I'm going to use this piece of mahogany instead of this one. Oh, that looks good. That's going to be a good joint, so I'll glue this up. Okay, let's see what it looks like. Alright, I can start cutting this down and figuring out how I'm going to shape it. It's always hard to know where to start first, but I'm looking at this. I think I can run this through the table saw and take off the back of this board. Okay, that's pretty good off the back here. Now I think I'll plane this down to level. Okay, that seems good and flat. Next thing I'll do is I'll cut off all this excess wood back to the table saw. Okay, so I still need to, I want to cut that little ridge. I need to now get this new wood. I need to define that edge really perfectly with the bottom of this piece of molding. Well, you know, actually, lining my straight edge up here, I think that is good. That is level. I don't need to take any off of there. It can be really difficult to tell sometimes exactly what to do when you're looking at these odd shapes. But I think I'm going to try to make this little cut right here, this little ledge. I'm going to make that cut all the way through on the table saw. So I put a
my good insert into the table saw. I've clamped this piece of wood here so I have a really good edge to run against. Because I'm going to set this up, I'm just going to try to cut that little line right there. I'll try a piece of scrap wood first. I'm really close. I'm a little deep. I'll drop the blade just a skosh. That looks really good. I'll give it a try. Just on a side note here, when I was making that cut, I reached over the table saw blade. Generally speaking, you should never reach over the table saw blade. This was such a light cut, the blade is only that much above the surface, so it was better that I control this piece. That looks good. It almost looks like it could be deeper. At least now I've got this line defined. I'm wondering if I shouldn't just try planing that down by hand though, rather than on the table saw. Okay, I think I've gotten this little ledge as good as I'm going to get it. It's a little funky in here where the wood joins. I'll look at that again later. I think what I want to do now is carve out this cove. So I'm going to make a line. So that line should be this edge here at the top of that cove. Okay, I think I've got this pretty good now. It's always difficult to tell here where the wood joins, but I've got it good. I think I can do the rest with sandpaper. The next step will be to cut this 45. Looks pretty good. I think I just need to sand it from here out. Alright, I'm going to set the molding aside for now. I know I'm going to have some more work to do on it when I install it. But now I'll get back to making the actual feet. And this is the board I milled up. And I think I will clamp it right here where it goes against the existing feet, and I'll be able to trace it out. Okay, so I've got the feet roughed out, and I've got to position them so I can cut off the ends, and I realized I do have to get back to the molding because they sit on top of the molding. So I need to attach this, shape it a little bit more, and get that all in position so that I can then, proceed with the feet. So there's a ton of glue and stuff where the molding was. I got to scrape that off.
And I think I'll run a piece of tape along here, just to help me keep the scraper from hitting the sides. Okay, so now I'm ready to attach the molding. I'm going to glue it just in the first, say, quarter of it, and then nail the rest of it. That's to allow for wood movement. And then once that's set, I can get back to working on the feet. It's funny, I work so hard at shaping my molding, trying to get it just right, and when I held it up to here, you can see how far off I am, but in a good way, because my molding is too big. So I'm going to attach this, and then I'll be able to plane down these elements till they match the molding in the front. So I think the next thing, because I've got to position my new feet with this molding, I think now's the time for me to go ahead and finish planing this down and shaping it to its finished dimension. I can see the shadow of where the old foot was, so I can position it right where it was. Funny, even though I'm going to ultimately have to distress these to match the other legs, I've still got to sand them really well with 100. I got to get all the tool marks out of them. Okay, I've got all my pieces just clamped dry into position now, but before I glue anything, I'm going to make all the glue blocks that go around to support these pieces. Okay, I've got all the pieces made that I need. I'm ready to start gluing. I'm gonna glue these blocks, these little corner blocks later. I'm gonna glue the bracket feet and these blocks, which, by the way, these blocks, believe it or not, are the real feet of this cabinet. These blocks are what bear the weight of the cabinet. In other words, this looks like the foot, this bracket foot, but it's just glued to the molding. These blocks go directly to the bottom of the cabinet and the weight rests on them. In fact, the corner block over here was missing, which makes me think if the corner blocks over here were missing, that would explain why these feet broke off, because they really can't support the cabinet. I already hollowed that out to match that curve ahead of time. okay. It's good. And you can see how I left these blocks slightly higher than these feet. I may take it down a little bit, but I want to make sure, especially that this old one has a big metal glider on it, and I may do the same here, but we need to make sure that the contact with the floor is on this post, not the feet. I'll just do these blocks now, just with a rub fit. Left the clamps on overnight. Okay, so I did some preliminary sanding before the glue up, but now I've got to sand them again with 100 and then 150, and then I'll have to distress them using the other feet as a guide on how to distress these, rounding over the corners and things like that. Now I can continue to shape this molding and figure out my transition here from the new piece of wood to the old, and I've got a lot of nails and cracks and stuff to fill in. Okay, so now I'm ready to stain it. I'm going to stain it with some walnut dye stain. But with the dye stain, I can let this set for just a few minutes and then come back and put more on. Now the next step is I'm going to stain it with some dark walnut oil stain. Now this side looks a little dark to me, so maybe I'll get some paint thinner and just wipe it off a little bit. So the stain is dried, so I will brush on a coat of shellac. Okay, I've let this first coat of shellac dry overnight. It looks really good. I won't know for sure about the color. I'm going to sand that and start putting some top coats on it. But first, I've got to turn this back over and stain all that new wood underneath. I've never had great luck being able to stain all this secondary wood, this pine, to look exactly like this old stuff, but I'll give it a try. I'm going to start with some thinned out perfect brown dye stain. Alright, I think that's pretty good. Maybe that's all I need to do. I'll turn this back over. So I'm just going to spray some aerosol lacquer now on this. Just gloss, build up some coats. Okay, I've sprayed about maybe like 4 coats of lacquer on my touch-ups from the aerosol can. Now I'm going to sand with 320 and spray one final coat of satin. Okay, this looks great. I've just got to polish this up. Well, there you go. This is a really nice antique chest of drawers, and I made all new feet for it on the left side here. It looks pretty good.